Afghanistan certainly has had a long, again like Poland, a long and difficult history in the sense that the British and the Russians, isn't that the whole thing that was called the Great Game?
It was the Great Game between Russia and the British Empire over a lot of different interests. And you have some people thinking that there's sort of a new Great Game there over not just minerals, but pipeline routes and oil politics, even though there's really no oil to speak of in Afghanistan, just the transport of it across it to avoid routes through Iran and places like that. So you have a new great game of influence simply because of its strategic location in the region.
Has it always been more important for its location than for its resources?
Pretty much.
I mean, other than being like the heavyweight in the poppy trade.
Right. Right. It's transportation route on the Silk Road, or for the Brits, you know, coming, or because of its proximity to India. In fact, Pakistan, of course, was part of India, and the whole Northwest Frontier Province was kind of out on the border for the British, and that's where they got shellacked coming on their way from Kabul to Jalalabad, where their whole army of theirs got wiped out trying to get out of Afghanistan.
So there's nothing new about what's going on in Afghanistan. Are you surprised the Taliban seems to be coming back?
No, because it's no one's ever been able to control that country from one central point. And the Pashtun areas where the Taliban are coming back, I think a lot of people had the misconception that until the Taliban came along that all these Pashtun areas were quite liberal in their approach, and the women didn't wear burqas, and in a lot of those areas the women have worn burqas and covered themselves completely for ages and will for ages to come, and still are now. Just in the cities like Kabul, they felt more liberated when the Taliban was gone, but they're very conservative areas. It's a tribal mentality. It's sort of me and my brother against the world, unless I happen to be fighting my brother. And if the Taliban has loyalty in those areas for keeping order, if they had it before, then they've got a lot of it now as well.
Well, I noticed the title of your book, The Warlord's Son, pretty well capitalized on that idea that you really think of Afghanistan as a series of fiefdoms presided over by warlords.
And they don't think of the Afghan-Pakistan border as really a border. It straddles the Pashtun tribal areas, and they think of that as all one area that's part and parcel and a law unto itself, and it is. They pretty much run
It's virtually
their own
impossible
places.
for a sane person to think that these tribal areas, whether it's Bosnia or whether it's Afghanistan or whatever, are really ever going to embrace democracy. It is not a political system that truly fits the tribal design.
Or if these areas did embrace democracy, maybe they would probably elect a lot of leaders we weren't real fond of, just as would happen in a lot of areas, such as Algeria or different places.
Well, but it was the same sort of thinking, I think, behind Vietnam. You can't go in and eliminate the structure that's there that you don't like without creating essentially a power vacuum for something else. I mean, I think that's the central problem with Iraq, is that, you know, what's to take the place?
Yeah, well,
unless you're going to stay forever.
And looked what happened in Gaza and the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority, which we thought we could deal with, were such poor and corrupt administrators that it gave Hamas an opening, and suddenly, thanks to democracy, we have Hamas in charge. So you have to be careful what you ask for when you say, oh yeah, we want to spread democracy everywhere. That doesn't mean that all the people we like are going to get elected.
Well, more than that, I think the bigger problem is that they aren't accustomed to doing it. I've always thought India did well despite the split with Pakistan, because the British had spent, it's kind of like the Romans. The Romans had a genius for going in and imposing their own administrative system, and then they would kind of leave it up to the locals to operate the machine. But they designed the machine, which worked pretty well in terms of their goals. And the British were good at that too, but we don't seem to have that mentality at all.
Well, and also we don't, but also in some of these areas, people's idea of who they should vote for is very different than it is in an area that's used to democracy, and they want somebody who has authority and the secret police and that kind of thing. I'll give you an example. In Yugoslavia, I was talking to a man once, and I saw someone came through campaigning against Milosevic, and this fellow listened to him for a while, this fellow villager, and the I believe the candidate's name was Draskowitz, and he said, "So do you agree with me?" And the man said, "I agree with everything you said." And he says, "And in fact, as soon as you get in power, I will vote for you every time." So he saw it as the cart before the horse. He thought, when you're strong enough and have enough power to assume the office, then I'll vote for you. But if you're going to be weak and just one of these small challenger candidates, I won't vote for you.
Well,
I don't think he could I don't think he could grasp the idea that he was the power if he had the vote. It was like, this person had to assume power, then I'll give you my vote.
I think that's very true. Martin Cruz Smith explored the Russian psyche fairly well in Stalin's Ghost, I think, when he mentioned the real nostalgia.
Right, for a Stalin-type character.
And we're all sitting here now beginning to think that maybe there may be a character like that right over there in Russia.
And he's very popular, too.
Exactly, but maybe when you have a country from such a strong authoritarian where the whole idea of power to the people has never been the case. I mean, look at the French. They had the French Revolution. It was power to the people, and they were so unable to deal with that that they turned right around and went to a very authoritarian. And we got Napoleon, and when Napoleon went, we got a king. So, I mean, the French, you know, tore it all down, but they were not able to govern for and by the people.
And also, we always, why we would do this, I don't know, given the way elections go here, but we seem to underestimate how easy it is to manipulate people with issues of passion or seemingly unimportant but, you know, very emotional issues. You would think they would learn that from some of the elections here where that's happened, where
or is happening right now.
Or is happening right now, where they'll say, all right, let's take the real significant issues and let's focus on something instead where it's easy to get people all in a lather. And that happens in these countries. They'll say, well, the West wants to influence you and take away your culture and dominate you and make you all westernized and forget your religion. You don't want that, do you? So they will vote for these more radicalized parties.
Well, I think radicalized is the key word, although I think that Islam has always been a militant and a proselytizing religion.
And in the militant wing, it certainly has. And you know, you'll have a lot of moderate Islamists who live in different cultures and have lived in different places and haven't just been exposed to that all their life. But
it's not only they haven't been exposed to it, but there's always, you know, the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots are always more radical. I've been absolutely fascinated watching.
They're easier to radicalize,
Well, they are. I've been fascinated watching what's happened in Ireland since it became so prosperous. That, you know, it has managed to quell the more radical aspects of a situation that looked like it would never have a resolution.
And people are too busy living well. They don't want to mess with
Exactly. And, you know, I think Dubai is an interesting country. It's a Middle Eastern country, but they have what they've done. I was fascinated to read. There's some kind of again, another journalist who wrote a book for 12, which is Jonathan Karp's imprint at Grand Central. I'm trying to think what the guy was doing. He was looking for happiness. He was looking for countries. And he went to Dubai, and one of the things he observed is that as soon as they had enough money, they brought in immigrant people
to do all the
scut work, whatever, and they're sitting there collecting these enormous, oil subsidies, and I think it's oil, isn't it?
Oil subsidies, and now it's all tourism and development money, but it was oil subsidies.
Okay, well, whatever. They've got a sort of a spigot they can turn on for cash, and so as soon as they got used to the good life, they brought in people to do, and now Dubai has got layers of people, but the people with the money are not as radical as, say, in other countries, because they have more to protect now. They're not so eager to give it up.
Right.
And, you know, I've often thought that the approach, if we had simply taken the amount of money this war costs and went in and tried to develop other stuff, you know, we might have been able to create enough people who were haves as opposed to have-nots that they would be a weight against. Ah, well. You've gotten terrific critical acclaim. Your first book, Lie in the Dark, won Britain's John Creasy Dagger, which is now called something else, for Best First Novel. And your second one won the Ian Fleming Steel Dagger.
Speaking of Ian Fleming,
Speaking of, for Best Thriller of the Year. Your third book, The Warlord's Son, got nominated for the Steel Dagger again, and was a New York Times notable book. And then The Prisoner of Guantanamo, you won the 2006 Hammett Award.